Just gonna lock to middle, or I'll eyeball it. I'll do. Time to post this in all the places. Don't think I have anywhere else to promote. That works. I actually don't have anywhere else to promote. Let me listen to the audio to promote. Let me listen to the audio to promote. My mic is really hissy. It's very quiet and it's very hissy, which is interesting. Perhaps this is maybe a little bit better. I don't even know what my records are right now. I'm gonna assume the hiss is a little bit better on the mic. Maybe. I'm gonna assume the hiss is a little bit better on the mic. Maybe. Assume the hiss. Hmm. I'm assuming everything's okay. If anyone has any thoughts, it would be appreciated. Feeling obese? Feeling obese? Anyway, might as well start. Turn off that. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at system number 18, which is basically arbitrary numbers. I started getting them last year. So let me go and get the system. So that's nice of YouTube to notify me that I'm live. Would never have noticed. So how would I describe the system? Really jank right now. This has quite a nice case. This cost me £41 including postage, I think. Came with the 3 front fans and 1 fan at the back. So 4 fans, which are they're RGB, but they're a really crappy kind of RGB. You'll see when we get to that. But it's a really nice value case. Has a tempered glass side panel. Like you see on top, it's got the removable magnetic dust filter. Quite nice case. The back looks quite reasonable. You got the cheap back plates. They're the kind you just punch out and they never go back in. And the front is actually fairly reasonable, quite coarse mesh. And you know, it's a fair design. Looks quite good. I quite like it. I think price-wise this one worked out really well. Not much to say. Standard I/O on the top. Don't know how the focus is going to work, but power button, reset switch, and LED switch, so you could hook that up to the LEDs if you had LEDs on these fans. I'll get to how bad the fans are when we get to it, but that's not hooked up to anything. Drive indicator light, whatever the fuck that is, I don't even know. Some kind of light indicator light, apparently. Microphone and headphone, I quite like it separate. I do not like the mixed slots, the combined slots at all, personally. 2 USB 2.0s and USB 3.0. It's just fair I/O for a really cheap case, you know. Can't argue with that. The whole point of this build is to be budget because it's got an FX 8120 in it, and I'll talk about why we want the rest of it to be budget. What makes a case have good airflow? Really just mesh front is like the main thing to look for. You get ones with like the tempered glass fronts with like just the side ventilation, and those are usually quite bad. Also just the ability to add a lot of fans. For example, 3 120mm fans at the front here, 120mm at the back. Pretty standard for a decent airflow case. And for example, you only have like 2 120s, you can see them here, but you only have 2 120s, and this is the blocked portion up here, it wouldn't be that great either. Not much else to say about it. Having the roof ventilation for optional fans there is also quite good. This one could fit to 140mm fans? No, 2 120s. And the roof ventilation. I should get a pillow or something because I want to prop this up at some point. I do have a nearby cushion. So let's take off the tempered glass panel. It uses these quite nice thumb screws. It comes with plastic wrap on both sides, as you would expect. I'll find that later. Fell on the back of my desk. Should have been a bit more careful. We'll pretend that didn't happen. Right, so the fans, as I said, they are a kind of... they're 120mm RGB fans. The LEDs do change, but they are very... I mean, you can even see here, you can even individually see the LEDs. There's no covering, there's nothing to even smooth them out. It's a very obvious, you can see the LED clearly, it's not blending together. So, here we have the Arctic piece of shit. I don't actually remember the name of this cooler, but it's very old. It's not very good. It's definitely from the generation of the CPU and the motherboard. The motherboard and the cooler, as well as the CPU, I got in a bundle for about £75–80. I don't remember. It was a really good deal at the time for what you get. It's just not great, but it's a good deal. So it's FXA 120, which is 8-core, very big inverted commas there. Performs pretty badly. Comparatively, you got something like a 2500K synthetic benchmarks, a 2011 chip like the 2500K overclocked. You could easily get double the score of the CPU. It's not a good CPU, and the reason I want everything to be budget oriented is because I'm going to have to, just to pair this, I need a cheap GPU and I need a very cheap PSU or something just to sort of make this saleable at its performance due to that FX 8120 CPU. It's got 16 gigs of DDR3 RAM. This is at 1600 MHz. I think I bought this as all 4 in a bundle, but you could also buy these in 2 sets of 2, for example. Quite commonly on eBay. You see that quite often for 8 gig kits, 2x4 sticks. Yeah, so it's quite decent RAM. This cost maybe £30–35 depending on where you're buying. So we're looking at a very low cost for the overall system as it is. You notice there isn't a GPU. We're going to be putting one in. I haven't got the GPU I want to put in this yet. But yeah, it's a nice Gigabyte motherboard, huge heatsink of the VRMs there. It's probably going to be decent for a reasonable overclock, but with this cooler and the CPU, I can't really justify that, and I can't justify the price to put on a better cooler either, because, well, it's just not worth it for the price point I'm going to sell this PC at. Turn machine over. We have some thumb screws on the back, but they are a little bit on the tighter side to hold on the side panel. These are plastic thumb screws, I think. Yeah, they're metal screws through a plastic thumb. So the cable management space in here, despite this being a flat panel as opposed to the other cheap cases having like a bulged out panel for extra cable management space, it's not that bad. This lip here gives you quite a bit of extra room, so this cable isn't actually getting squished as it looks. This is really quickly and badly cable managed. I'm not using this power supply, I'm getting an even cheaper one. You look at this, you say a Thermaltake Light Power, that is pretty much the cheapest and bottom basement of PSUs you can get. Well, I'm actually going a step further. This costs, what, £35–40 to buy new. I'm replacing it with a used 2012 orange, I think it is, CX 450 watt that I'm getting for £25. So yeah, this is going out the window in terms of getting a really bad PSU. But until then, this is what we're dealing with. You can also see some quite funky stuff going on here. So yeah, it does have decent hooks for the cable management. I quite like it as a case, to be honest. It's really not too bad. But the fans are a bit of an issue. And everything's just stuffed in here right now because I'm not using much of it. So this is the fans. The fans actually don't have additional 3-pin connectors to either power from the motherboard or even control through fan software or whatever, or even to connect to a fan hub. They straight up just all use plain 2-pin Molex. No controller, nothing else, just the 2-pin Molex for power, and that is it. So what's the problem with this? Well, the fans actually running at 12 volt, they are like a jet tunnel level of loud. Like, it's absolute brutality. So we have to do something about that, and we have to do something that's kind of known in the past as a 7 volt mod, but we're using it as a 5 volt mod here. Basically, when it comes to power supplies, let me just remove these labels. I'm the only person who's going to be using this PSU, and I'm going to be reversing this mod when I remove this PSU and replace it with the other one. you should never really do this with an actual, to the PSU itself, the wires coming off the PSU. You only should do this with, like, for example, get a splitter and then turn it around. But basically what you have is the yellow is your 12 volt, the two blacks are the grounds, and the red is your 5 volt. And these traditionally, when it came, is connected 12 volt, 0 volt, 0 volt, both grounds, and then 5 volt. And what really happens is that the one it's connected to on the outer is the one, the voltage it takes, and it takes the difference of the one next to it. So we got 12 volts, 0 volts, you got 12 volts. If we took the 12 volt, and then we put the 5 volt next to it, then you get 12 volts minus the 5 volts on the ground, and you get 7 volts, which makes your fans run, you know, that decent bit slower. You know, the ratio 12 to 5, 12 to 7. But here, I just switched them around, so 12 volts here now, which is not in use by the fan at all. And the 5 volt is here, so 5 volt to 0. It's generally safer in regard as a much better thing to do to not use a 5 volt as a ground, or just any voltage on the ground. And I kind of agree with that. So we've got a 12 to 5 reduction ratio on the fan speed doing a 5 volt, but it's safer. Again, you should never do this on a PSU. Do it on, for example, a splitter. You might have like a Y splitter that will split one Molex into two and just do it to one of them. But yeah, because no one makes like 3-inch cable extensions for the Molex. It just wouldn't make any sense. So that's a mod you kind of have to do on this case. Bit of fun learning that. Big massive cables for the front I/O there. Just grab a drink. Not too much else to say back here, it's a bit of a mess. But this is a really decent channel for cable management. And obviously a few tie-in points and a few tie-in points throughout here. So it's, for a cheap case, it's actually really quite good. One thing I would say is that this distance here, for example, if you've got a PSU and you're coming out over to this way to get your cables from your GPU routed, for example, in a non-modular PSU, it's actually quite a long distance. Like this easily could be taken in back a bit with the design and to give you better access. So what we're doing here is we're going to plug in an SSD and a graphics card, because that's what this is currently missing. I've yet to decide on an SSD to get for this, but I'm thinking a 500 gig 2.5-inch SSD. Just straight up that. And if someone's adding storage later, they can. Something I should probably also mention is that these motherboard standoffs are actually like, they're pretty jank and they really twist apart in the case when you're trying to screw into them. So getting the motherboard in, and also the alignment is kind of poor. So it has a lot of the cheap case feeling, but it's fine otherwise, it's passable. You can just make it work for an older budget system like this. So yeah, GPU GTX 960 is coming in this. So I'm going to get the GPU and the SSD. So the SSD I use for these benchmarks is a Kingston SSD Now 300. Is that actually the name of it? I never bothered looking until now. 120 gig SSD. As you know, used SSDs are usually not that great to go for, because of obviously the lifetime and cycles, the amount of times they can be written or written to. It's not usually worth using used SSDs in new systems, regardless of it. So my old SSD, back when SSDs were extremely expensive, were 120 gigs. This is what I used, and now I've reused it as sort of a benchmarking drive. I've got a couple games on there and bits of software I can use for benchmarking and checking some things out. So we're just going to grab any SAT cable lying around. Just also mention, if you don't know how to install a hard drive, they have these connectors in modern times for 2.5 and 3.5 inch drives. And the bigger one here is the power, and it's these flat cables. These are called your SATA power. Why is there Molex on the end of a... I don't know. I struggle to think with these cheap PSUs anymore. It has a side line on it, you better line that up. Bit of a tight fit right away. And the smaller one is for a SATA cable to connect to the motherboard. That's where the data gets transferred. I need to double check the motherboard, because if I remember correctly, passing through... Yeah. So passing through a SATA cable from these things through this little gap here, you see where this cable is coming from? Is actually, like, it was kind of a big problem, if I remember right. So I can't fit onto the mobile. I should just be able to cheese it a bit. Which direction does this fit? Ah, it fits that way. Should just be able to squeeze that in. There we go. Again, when I replace the PSU, I'll do some proper cable management around here. And we got that through there. This case also came with a small bag of hardware, but oops, oh, that was up on that out of the way. But the hardware this case came with, it was in a tiny little bag, not like a resealable one. It's one of my slight frustrations is getting those. I am not a huge fan of getting those non-resealable bags of screws. Just ensure this all stays tucked in there for when we lie it face down. Just put that in the bin. So now we're going to install the GPU. So we're going to be using the top slot. And this has a little bit of funky stuff going on back here. So we need to loosen this screw first to get this PCIe cover to rise. And there's a couple of screws in here. These come as in the bag of case hardware, but I installed them in here. Screwdriver's lost its magnetism. I would say in terms of quality, this whole setup here with the PCIe covers and brackets, it's quite on the cheap side. I should also mention this PSU is actually not good enough for the GPU I want to put in here, the GTX 980 right now. But if we're not stressing it, it's not going to be a huge problem. So we want to put it in, we want to make sure this goes under that cover, but in the right place. Make sure we don't crush any wires here. And it's not far enough forward yet. A bit of the bracket there is getting stuck on those capacitors. And there we go. We're now lining up with the blue slot. Push it in, should be a firmish click. Looks in there securely. Now we're going to want to screw it in. Please tell me this is still magnetic. Yeah, it is. Going to lift this up a little bit just to make sure that these screws really do pinch down on the plate. These screws are not going in well because it's, well, cheap case, what do I expect? Let's got that securely. Graphics cards are really easy to insert and remove because it's just as simple as putting them in the slot and screwing them in. So we would screw, if we're doing a permanent installation, obviously we would then screw this back in to hold that down, but this isn't going to be permanent. This is just temporary, so we could test the CPU on this machine. So, just to see if we can see it, yes we can. Blue slot there. Usually there is a little tab you can push down on the side to release it, but we don't actually have that tab on this motherboard. It's part of the reason I got it so cheap, I was missing a tiny little tab. So our GPU here, it has an 8-pin connector and a 6-pin connector, and our GPU has two PCIe 6+2 connectors. So basically these are 8-pin connectors, but you could break them off in 6-pin. So they're multifunction. Some will come with two separate PCIe cables that go straight to the PSU, so they won't be like daisy chained like this. Those are fine. Some will only come with one, and you have to do some things on those, like 2 Molex to 8-pin or 6-pin PCIe connectors, which are relatively safe to use. Just going to determine how we're going to do this. This looks like it probably bends in the best in terms of not giving us that much excess cables. You switch it this way, it just looks a bit ugly. So we're going to 8-pin on this side. These just fit together, the 6 and the 2-pin, and it plugs in there. Push it till it clicks. They do have these little latches, and as you can see, there's no like lip for the latches to go on here. The lip's actually on this lower side, which is not so common. I usually find the lip on the upper side. I have my headphones on, so I can't tell if that clipped or not. Just gonna tuck this in there. I know this is very far from a complete build, and PSU I'm going to be using at least will have better looking cables. But now we will be ready to plug this in. Upside down. Make sure to flip the switch at the bottom. And right away you can see the problem, the RGBs and the LEDs. No, the LEDs and the RGB fans, that's what I meant to say. They just are so visible. A quick show of this side of the PC. As I said, it looks okayish from a distance. Up close it's a bit. From side on, when you've got this sort of patterned mesh, it actually, you know, looks decent enough. No complaints there. Let's tuck these cables back in, let's move this PC over here. So we're going to be moving over to the TV. Old TV, not like a specialist monitor of any kind. Just something we thought I'd use. Now, this GPU in particular, the Palette Jetstream GTX 980, it has a big flaw in that it just lacks some really simple stuff. Like, all the display ports and HDMIs on it are mini. The DVI is the only full-size connector, as you can see. Mini HDMI, 3 mini DPs, display ports, and the full-size DVI. So I don't actually have a mini HDMI or mini DisplayPort cable handy to HDMI for this TV. So the best we're going to have to do is quickly put in a DVI. We don't need to screw that in fully, we could leave that as is. It's not a huge issue. Now, what's going on in this TV then? What? There's no exit button though. Why is this doing this now? It wasn't doing it earlier. I'm being roasted by a TV. Nothing new there. So without an exit button, what is... How's anyone supposed to deal with this TV? So hopefully this works without any issue. There we go. So I'm gonna see if I can get the webcam to do anything else. That's never gonna be in focus, is it? I'm not sure how this is going to work with the auto game. So I have this, oh, there's webcam over there. Little mini Wi-Fi adapter. Turn that volume down before I wake up the house. These aren't exactly a great keyboard and mouse, but they are just ones I have handy. As you can tell, the resolution's 1366 by 768, I think that standard is. I don't know off the top of my head, or remember, I mean. But let's see what we're getting here. Okay, we're connected to the Wi-Fi. Let's check out hardware info. I believe I do have the GTX 980 driver already installed. But we'll just go over that. Just go to Google, just do NVIDIA drivers. That's all you really need to type into Google. Top page, nvidia.co.uk/download. Take to their page, product type. So RTX is just when you select an RTX card. GeForce will also cover most. RTX is Quadro, sorry. GeForce will be all of them. 30 series, 20 series, we're going back to the 900 series. GTX 980, Windows 10 64-bit, search. And comes up their same multi-use driver. So when you click on download, just click on that. Make sure it runs. It's pretty slow download. But yeah, when that comes up, then we'll just install the drivers. As I said, I'm pretty sure this already has the drivers for the GTX 980 on it. I think it's the last one I actually did test it with, but not when I had this set up. I'm just going to run MSI Afterburner. Everything seems to be running fine here. Let's run core temp. We're getting 32 degrees on our GPU, and we're getting currently about 50 degrees, not really doing much on our CPU, but it's kind of a crappy CPU. So we have Cinebench R20 and R23. Let's run R23 for completeness sake. This is how you would usually benchmark a CPU. We do have something downloading, which can definitely cause us some issues. As I said, I'm pretty sure we got the right driver, so we're going to pause and cancel this. So in Cinebench, let's run multicore. I'm thinking at some point of getting some sort of capture card for this monitor. Maybe get a hold of a really cheap 1080p monitor, and then a really cheap capture card. That way it could be really easy for me to get along with this. And this could take a while. This is just Cinebench for you. So in terms of quality, I'm not using the best of parts for this. The 960 is actually decent, but the thing is, it's going from palette to Zotac. It's like going from like a Ford to, I don't know, what's an equally crappy car? Yeah, so palette to Zotac they're basically very similar. They're both kind of at the bottom of the range in terms of just their warranties, how well their GPUs perform compared to others in the same class. They're just kind of budget versions that mostly OEMs like to use, because they could save some money giving them a cheap and a bad version of a product, but still say it's that product. So I don't have high opinions of Palette and Zotac in particular. And this Palette Jetstream, I actually think is probably one of the best GPUs I've ever seen from Palette. It's okay, but whoever made the decision on the mini DisplayPorts and mini HDMI were crazy. Keyboard's just a semi-mechanical, not really mechanical keyboard. The mouse is just some cheap crappy AliExpress find. You know, it works perfectly fine. It's just a benchmark mouse. I went 2-1 in some random unranked Valorant match with it. By the way, let me know what you think about the music. I think it's probably okay. It's from YouTube's copyright-free audio library. I am recording my voice separate to the stream, so I'm actually not recording the audio in the voice, and I'm going to match it up later. So in the VOD I'm going to have no audio, I can put my own music and it'll be consistent. Because in the VOD I'm actually going to be cutting it up, taking out all the breaks, to make a more interesting video. Let's take a quick look at the temps we're getting here in core temp. We are looking at 51 degrees, 52 max. The CPU is really not being stressed yet at all, although to be fair, the case is wide open. So that's not exactly a benchmark of any kind. It's pretty cool. Free up space notification. What? Don't quite know what just happened there. But let's see what happens after one pass. Generally, what Cinebench R23 does now is it does multiple passes, and it will give you an average after 10 minutes. Here, we're just going to do one pass, stop it, and then see. It's not going to be the best test because of very many factors. We've got much cooler temperatures, so it's never going to peak in throttle and have lower boosts. And as a result, that also means that multiple passes to make sure that it's not doing that, it's going to be a bit pointless. 51 degrees. It's running pretty cool actually. It is running potato slow though. This is about as slow as can get. So yeah, one of the first things I want to invest in next is some kind of capture card for this monitor, as well as just maybe like spend 30-40 pounds on a used 1080p 60 monitor. That's more than enough to have a cheap benchmarking monitor. Although to be completely fair to myself, I'm not entirely sure if that's going to be a worthwhile investment. So we're getting towards the end. I'm going to assume we still have another pass on the right side of this. Again, let me just quickly try that. It does not let me resize this at all. No? Okay. Good. Just disappears in a bench. Uh, okay. Just to mention, this is automatically using 1.41 volts for just like 3100 megahertz at the most part clocks. I haven't got a clue where it's gone. 1360 by 768. Okay. Let's see if this janks things around a little bit. Oh, looks like the NVIDIA display adapter did not like that. I am a little bit confused as to why Cinebench decided to disappear off the edge of the planet. All the cores are still under 100% load though. Oops, open that twice. Let's trick into thinking it's 1080p. Maybe them can get some answers. I'm without the faintest clue. What? Someone in the name of the earth explain what just happened? I'm just gonna assume I wasn't a big fan of that increase. I'm just trying to figure out where Cinebench went. Like it literally bailed off the planet. And it seems to still be running. Oh, it's doing the 10-minute test. Okay. Let's see if this junks out again. Nope, not a big fan. Oops. So let's run Furmark as well. This might be a problem for the GPU, as I said, 450 watts and a very low quality power supply, probably not adequate. Yep, let's see what this gets. Looks like we're looking 81 FPS at 1080p, roughly. Graphics card looks like it's capped. 98% usage, 46% degrees, increasing steadily. So, all seems to be running fine. We'll just wait till the end of the benchmark. See what results we get. I can't wait to finish this machine, but I'm trying to already work on the next machine. I wonder if anyone's selling a cheap capture card on eBay or locally. Someone's selling a decent 1080p Elgato. Alright, what are we getting? We are getting on the 1920 by 1080 A0 anti-aliasing samples. We are getting average 81 FPS at the 1080p preset. So, can't complain about that. GPU seems to run fully there. Highest temperature here is again 54 degrees. I do have CFDs installed on here. Kind of curious how that goes. What do you want, Microsoft? What? That was it? What? Okay, that sounded. Can someone just like Ugh. I need to turn this off just for a second. Please tell me this is going to work now. This is tech problems galore, but this is what we do. So it looks like we get into the menu. Nice, good start. So we probably should test this to failure. Surprisingly, this looks really good on this TV. You have no idea. At this low resolution, it's actually like pretty fine. Don't know if I can take a decent picture of that though. Video settings. Uh, it's 1080p. FPS and ping, double buffering. Graphic settings all are mythical, except rare, which is where that one maxes out. Let's start on a galleon. I wonder if no. For some reason that makes it worse. And then pointing the light at the screen makes that worse. Okay, so there's not really any way to make that any easier. See, I'm kind of hoping to get a capture card for this. I think that would be quite nice. I wonder if my brother still has his and doesn't use it. Hmm. I wonder how the ping is going to be on Wi-Fi with the tiniest Wi-Fi adapter. Why is the FPS in the menus so jank? We're in the tavern, a pretty laggy area. Looking on OBS, this looks to you a lot laggier than it actually is to me. Yeah, to me this is pretty smooth. 50 FPS. GPU is only 52%. CPU is 2%. Alright, this is interesting. We're not maxing out either GPU or CPU yet. Probably because the resolution is quite low. Wonder it would make more sense to me to change my resolution in the NVIDIA panel. GPU is now at 75% usage. Storage crate for free. This is a bit perplexing. I'm not getting FPS we should be hitting, but our GPU is not getting the use it should be getting used. No FPS frame lock. Take a step down, see if that helps out a little bit. And it doesn't really. Wait, what? Oh, the resolution is fixed at 760. It will not let me go higher. Unless we cheese it a little bit. And this may or may not make the TV very unhappy with us. We'll see how it goes. There we go. Officially running at 1080p. GPU usage is starting to kick up a bit. Not as much as I like, but it's definitely going up a bit. Perhaps it would like me to exit out. CPU is actually getting hit quite a bit. This GPU is really not appropriate for the system though. If anything, it's just a little bit of messing around. Oh, by the way, the right click on this mouse is a bit screwy. That's why it's doing this ladder slow stuff. Let's exit out of that. So we conclude the CPU seems to be working. It's working fine at reasonable temperatures actually. Although of course it's kind of hard to tell when the case is half open. But everything seems to be working perfectly fine. As soon as I can get the proper GPU and the PSU for this, everything should be good. Let's just quickly test to see everything's working fine. Although I have already tested it before, and I wanted to give a quick overview of the system. So we're going to power this one down. Just wait till it turns off. Turn off bias power switch. So we're going to sort that out later. For now, we are going to move to Opera. So here we're going to take a quick look at PC part picker. We want to basically find some parts that we can use for this machine, future machines. We'll see how it goes. Let me just... I don't know why this music paused for no reason. So, just basically go to Google or just type in your search bar, PC Power Picker, pcpowerpicker.com, first thing that comes up. And the first thing you should always do is change this to your country or the closest country to you. It doesn't... If you don't have PC Power Picker in your country, if it's not on the list, then just pick somewhere like United States and you can put together some parts and ask people on their opinions. But we're going to look for a specific part today, so I'm in the UK. I'm going to select United Kingdom. Go to System Builder, and here you can build a system. You can also save it. You can have an account. But today we're just going to be looking for a part. So for power supplies, we're going to choose power supply. Click on that. And here we have all the power supplies available and the cheapest price you could buy them for in your country. So we have a system, let's say I'm going to put this GTX 980 into a machine with maybe like an overclocked 2500K, maybe 3400G, maybe a 10400F, maybe some of these budget CPUs. This is a really good one, the second top of the line, almost from its day, but a few generations old graphics card. So it's going to need a lot of power, but we're not going to care so much about the quality. We can have a PSU that'd be great for a budget system today, and use it on this happily because it's an old used part. You don't care so much about it. So you click on price here to sort by price, make sure it's sorted by the lowest, and you have all these filters on the left. You can choose any manufacturer that you want. Ratings, I wouldn't really rely on these ratings. Like, they're good to read, but there's so few of them across the board, then you really shouldn't be bothering about it. Your efficiency, here we're really just going to go for the wattage though. So we want 550 watt, it's pretty good for this kind of system that we're looking to build. And sort by price. So then we got all these options. We got 600 watt cooling classic power, then we got the 700 watt version, the EVGA 100W1 K1 at 600 watts, and your GPR, Sounds Performance C, Seasonic S123. So we've got all these options right away. How do we know what to choose? Well, as well as SSDs, you have a PSU tier list. Literally go to Google, type in PSU tier list, not tier like I just about did, and on the LTT forum you'll find a PSU tier list. This is pretty accurate all across the board, I must say. So look at your options. You don't always need to go for brands that you don't recognize. Most of them are usually not so good. But some brands you'll recognize, EVJ, they have hit or miss units. Some are decent. Seasonic, usually great units. Be Quiet, usually great units. Cooler Master, mostly decent-ish units. So yeah, if you recognize the brand, then chances are they have a decent unit. Look it up. So, PSU tier list. Here we go. Tier A for recommended high-end systems. These are very good, but usually quite expensive. Usually talking like £100 absolute minimum for the cheapest in this batch. Some of these could be several hundreds. Tier B, mid-range systems, we're talking like 1 to 2,000 here maybe. 1 to 1,500 maybe. Tier C, we're talking like maybe like 600 to 1,000. And Tier D, we're talking for very cheap iGPU systems. I wouldn't say iGPU, maybe like cheaper GPUs. You can get away with one of these for a sub £600 system, but you could probably get Tier C for not that much more. And obviously Tier E is just generally PSUs you should avoid, of which of course are VS2012. Is it CX or VS I've got coming to me? Maybe it's VS. Just avoid these if you can, unless you're putting them in very systems you don't care about. So let's take a quick look. Colic Classic Power. See if we can find out more about it. £45 on Curry's PC World in stock. This price also includes the shipping and handling. So, Coolant Classic Power KL600V2. If the wattage is usually in the model name, then you just take it out. Like this would be the KLV2, for example. Everything looks fine. You know, T plus bronze. You can check out the reviews on the site, but on Curry's, it's generally not like great. I mean, you could already see this is just bad overall. Let's try refreshing that. This has 2 reviews. One is it's good, doesn't come with the power lead. Most don't. Well, maybe half and half. I buy a lot of cheap PSUs, so it's probably skewing my opinion quite a bit. YouTube just decided to reset. Interesting. This guy, none, didn't work at the box, requested a refund. He probably got his refund, left a negative review anyway. There are always issues with power supplies occasionally. You may need to return them. Any computer part you may experience that, so that's why reviews can be a bit deceiving. So we're looking for the Coolant Classic Power KLV2. Always just go to the page, do Control F and type in the brand name. And you can either scroll to find them or just go through here. And immediately we come across Classic KLV2, which is the model we just saw. This is in Tier C, for cheap mid to low end systems. This system's going to cost me, even with a 988, less than £600. Maybe I would even get one of these for an £800 system. So it's in low priority units, there's not much info on it, or there's just minor issues, but it's still within the tier. We can see that this is definitely a power supply for the job. So Coolant Classic Power, that is something we would consider getting. Just cross-reference things with the PSU tier list. EVJ 100W1, probably just the W1. I already know this one, it's very common. So we're at the bottom of tier D here, even in the minor issues or lack of info. So this is probably not something we would consider for the system. If we're building a system that has like a 3400G, no graphics card, you know, maybe that's fair, 2400G. And yeah, so basically just do that and find yourself the cheapest GPU that fits within the tier that's appropriate for you. If we didn't do this, if we did go for the Coolant, for example, just spoiler alert, I did already order one of these 600W Coolants for a separate system I'm planning. And you just wanted to go with a more well-known brand name, EVJ W1 here, for example. £55, Of course, you would kind of try and avoid this one. You're paying £10 more, and if you're building a lower tier system where this is actually appropriate, then you can just straight up get better with, you know, a cheaper price. It's quite a considerable saving. Be Quiet System Power 9 is something I would kind of recommend. I think Pure Power is the better Be Quiet, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah. So yeah, always keep an eye on this, and this can also get you some good deals. For example, there was a GameMax GP, which GameMax are not rated as good power supplies under any stretch of the imagination. But for really cheap systems, then they're worth it if they're on a very good deal. And it was cheaper, it was £40 or something. And when you're building a budget system, those kinds of savings are quite important. So you go to System Builder, you want to build a system. You could also do the same thing. Like for example, if you're trying to build a new system, iGPU 3400G, 2400G, you want 16 gigs of RAM because it's going to be using some of that RAM for the graphics. You know, just set your filters. DDR4, our speed, we don't really care so much about our speed, but let's try 3200. For Ryzen, you tend to want the faster RAM. For Zen Plus, which is the 1000-2000 series, 3200 MHz is generally regarded as kind of a sweet spot. For 3rd gen 3000 series, 3600 MHz is usually the sweet spot. You have to remember that the 3200G and the 3400G are actually on Zen Plus architecture before. 3200 MHz RAM seems to be the best thing for them. So we could do 2x8 gig, 4x4 gig configs here. I don't think we're going to see much in terms of 4x4 gig. But let's see, latency doesn't matter as much at this stage. But DDR4, 16 gigs of RAM, cheapest price, £17 for Vengeance, LPX, 3600 MHz. Cast latency is 20, which is pretty poor. I would consider avoiding this actually and go for this one. ADATA XPG, this is RGB RAM. Looks a bit overkill, I personally wouldn't buy it, but we got some decent deals here. We're looking at £70 to £75 for basically the whole selection of RAM. And 16 gigs of RAM for 60-70 quid. Who's going to complain? G-Skill Trine Z 16 gig. Trine Z is usually very good RAM. I don't know this website. TechNXT. I personally wouldn't trust this website. But yeah, you could have the option of the websites you want to choose. eBuyer, for example, has them in stock for a little bit higher of a price. I'm actually tempted to buy some of this RAM now. So yeah, you get the idea. I'm actually kind of curious about buying this for the 2400G I have ordered. People buy RGB. Cases are something else. Cases are very difficult. You need to actually really look through cases. Because, like, getting fans included on budget cases is really important. Otherwise, just look for mesh, look for the ability to add fans if it doesn't come with them, and yeah, try and get good airflow. I'm pretty dehydrated. I could end the stream now. I don't really know how to continue from here, so I think I'm probably going to end it now. Looks like Audacity crashed, so this may be quite difficult for me to mash up into a VOD later. I probably won't, considering the things I went wrong. Just double check how big of a recording this crate. 21 gigabyte recording. Are you kidding me? Wow. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming. See you later. I'll be streaming Sea of Thieves here.